My name is Harper. I'm 28. And 3 weeks ago, in my parents' driveway in Ohio, my mom pointed at the house like it wasn't mine anymore and screamed, "You're useless. You're just taking up space." My dad stood behind her, quiet. My brother smirked from the porch like he'd won something. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't explain myself again. I just looked at the keys in my hand. The keys to the life I'd been holding together for everyone but me. But what they never realized was what stopped working the moment I stepped back. There was a time I would have heard my mom say, "useless," and immediately started listing everything I did, like it was evidence in a courtroom. The receipts, the chores, the errands, the invisible stuff no one wants to admit they need. But families like mine don't run on facts. They run on roles. And you don't get to pick yours. It gets assigned. Quietly. Over years. One small moment at a time. When I was a kid, I learned early that being easy made the house calmer. If I stayed quiet, if I got good grades, if I didn't ask for too much, the air felt lighter. So I became the one who didn't cause problems, the one who noticed problems before they turned into fights. The dishwasher would break, and I'd be the one Googling the model number. The Wi-Fi would drop and I'd crawl behind the TV stand, dust in my nose, resetting the router, while everyone else complained. My dad would toss an envelope onto the counter and say, "Can you figure out what this is?" Like it was normal that the same person he'd call still a kid was also the person translating adulthood for him. I didn't do it because I wanted a medal. I did it because I thought that's what love looked like. Because if I kept things running, maybe I'd feel safe. Maybe I'd feel needed in a way that mattered. But being needed is a slippery thing. At first it's, "Thank you, honey." Then it becomes, "Can you just handle it?" And then it turns into silence. No thank you, no acknowledgement, just expectation. Like the house itself will collapse if you stop moving. My brother never had to learn that language. He got to be loud. He got to be ambitious. He got to be the one they bragged about. He could forget birthdays. He could show up late. He could say, "I'm busy." And everyone would nod like that was a respectable excuse. If I said I was tired, it sounded like a complaint. If I asked for help, it sounded like failure. So I became the fixer, the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over the sharp edges so no one else had to feel them. I'd clean up after dinner before anyone asked. I'd refill the paper towels. I'd schedule the dentist appointments. I'd keep track of the little passwords and the security codes. I'd be the person who reminded my mom to call the insurance company back. I'd be the person who sat on hold and listened to that awful music so she didn't have to. And the more reliable I became, the less visible I got. Because once you do something without being asked, people stop seeing it as effort. They start seeing it as the natural order of things, like gravity, like electricity, like it's just there. In families like this, being reliable slowly turns into being invisible. And here's the part nobody tells you. The good kid role isn't always praised. Sometimes it's used. Sometimes it's the family's quiet way of outsourcing their stress onto one person who won't push back. One person who keeps the peace, even if it costs them their voice. So when I came back home after a rough patch, I didn't come in slamming doors or demanding comfort. I came in trying to be small, useful, easy. I thought if I proved I wasn't a burden, I'd earn my place. But the role was already written. In my mom's mind, I wasn't the daughter who held things together. I was the daughter who should have been doing better. The one who made her feel embarrassed in front of relatives. The one whose struggle threatened the story she liked to tell about our family. And that's why, when she looked at me in that driveway and called me useless, it didn't actually surprise me. It just finally named what had been happening for years. She didn't see the work because the work wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. It was steady. It was the kind of effort that only becomes obvious when it's gone. And I think that's what broke something in me. Not the insult. The certainty behind it. Because if the person benefiting the most from your effort can still look you in the eye and call you worthless, then you were never being valued. You were being managed, placed, contained. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Here's the part that makes people on the outside shrug and say, well, maybe they're right. Because the way my family measured value was never about what kept the house standing. It was about what looked impressive from the street. If you weren't loud about what you did, it didn't count. If you weren't struggling out loud, you weren't trying. And if you handled things quietly, you didn't exist. That's the twisted math in a lot of families like mine. Peace becomes proof that you're unnecessary. Stability becomes proof that you're doing nothing. And the person who prevents disasters is the same person who gets blamed for not contributing. I watched it play out over and over. My brother would breeze in for a weekend, talk about work, drop a few big-sounding phrases like promotion track and networking, and my mom would light up like someone turned on a different version of her. She'd laugh louder. She'd sit straighter. She'd ask questions like she was interviewing him for a magazine feature. My dad would nod along, proud, even if he didn't understand half of it. Then I'd walk through the kitchen and my mom would glance at me like I was background noise. Not cruel in an obvious way, just dismissive. Like my presence didn't add anything to the room. And it wasn't because I wasn't doing anything. It was because my work didn't make a sound. You know what contributing looked like in my house? It looked like a paycheck, a title, a story you could repeat at church. It looked like something you could brag about without explaining the boring parts. You know what my contributing looked like? It looked like the lights staying on, the pantry being stocked, the car registration getting renewed on time, the mortgage payment not being late. It looked like a printer that magically had ink again. A phone that suddenly stopped showing scary pop-ups because I went in and cleaned it up. A calendar that was suddenly organized because I built it and then quietly reminded everyone where they were supposed to be. I was the one who noticed the little cracks before they turned into something you couldn't hide. My mom would get an email from the bank and her face would tighten. She'd call it complicated, like the complexity was personal. Then she'd slide her phone across the counter toward me without even asking. Just that look. The one that said, "Fix it." The one that said, "You're good at this stuff." Like it was a compliment instead of a leash. My dad would come home, sit down, turn on the TV. And if something stopped being a problem, he accepted that as the natural order of the world. He didn't wonder who had handled it. He didn't ask what it took. He just enjoyed the quiet. And for a while, I convinced myself that was fine. That being the one who kept things smooth meant I mattered. That being dependable meant I was loved. But there's a difference between being loved and being used. Because the moment I wasn't doing something visibly impressive, the narrative snapped right back into place. I was still here. I was not moving forward. I was taking up space. The same hands that reached for my help without hesitation would turn around and point at me like I was the reason everything felt heavy. It's like being the person who mops the floor in a restaurant. If you do your job well, nobody notices. They just assume the floor is supposed to be clean. But the second you stop, everyone suddenly has opinions. Everyone suddenly sees it. And somehow, they're angry at you for making them aware of what you were doing all along. That's what my mom did. She didn't see my effort as effort. She saw it as baseline, as entitlement, as something she deserved because she was the parent and I was the child, even at 28. And the quietest, cruelest part? The role made me complicit. Because I trained them. I trained them to expect it. I trained them to lean on me without naming it. I became so good at preventing chaos that they started believing chaos couldn't touch them. So when my mom looked at me in that driveway and called me useless, she genuinely believed it. Not because she had proof, but because the only proof she recognized was performance. And I realized something that made my stomach drop. The problem wasn't that I did nothing. The problem was that everything worked. I didn't leave that driveway with a grand speech. I didn't slam a door. I didn't announce a boundary like it was a headline. I just got quieter. That same night, I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at my phone like it was a live wire. Not because I was scared of them, because I knew exactly how deep my fingerprints were on their life. Every login, every account recovery email, every autopay, every little system that kept their world feeling normal. And I realized something simple. If I kept doing what I'd always done, nothing would ever change. So I stepped back. Not dramatically. Practically. I stopped checking the shared family calendar. I stopped refilling the pantry list. I stopped forwarding the important notice emails my mom never opened. I didn't cancel anything. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't do anything that could be called revenge. I just stopped being the invisible employee. The first crack showed up 3 days later. My mom stormed into the living room with her phone held out like evidence. The internet is down, she said, sharp and annoyed, as if the universe had personally disrespected her. Fix it. I stared at the screen for a second, then I said, call the provider. She blinked, like I'd spoken another language. What do you mean, call them? She snapped. You always handle it. I used to, I said. Calm, flat, the numbers on the bill. That was the first time I saw it. The confusion, the discomfort, not because she couldn't call a customer service line, but because she'd never had to. Because her life had been built around the assumption that I would. She huffed, muttered something about me being difficult, and walked away like she'd won. But the Wi-Fi didn't come back that day. And suddenly, the house wasn't just tense, it was inconvenient. Then, it was the bank. A notification popped up on my phone, because years ago I'd set the alerts to my email so my parents wouldn't get overwhelmed. A fraud protection message, a login attempt, a verification code, the kind of thing you don't think about until you need it. Normally, I would have typed it in, reset the password, cleared the flag. Done. Instead, I locked my phone and let it sit face down on the table. An hour later, my dad's voice drifted from the kitchen, uncertain. Honey, do you know why the bank account is locked? My mom answered for me. Because she doesn't do anything around here anymore, she said, loud enough for me to hear. Like she wanted the words to land. Like she wanted me to feel them. I didn't move. I didn't rush in. I didn't defend myself. Because here's the thing about roles. The moment you step out of yours, the whole system starts panicking. Not because you did something wrong, because you stopped doing what kept everyone else comfortable. That night, my phone lit up. Dad, missed call. Dad again, another missed call. Then my mom. No voicemail, just the silence of someone who didn't want a record of what they were about to say. Then my aunt, Marlene, who only ever called when there was gossip or a crisis. And it wasn't even the bank that made my stomach twist. It was the pattern, the speed, the way they all reached for me like a tool they couldn't find in the drawer. Finally, a text came through from my dad. Please, we can't access the account. Your mom is freaking out. Do you know what happened? I stared at that message for a long time. Not because I didn't know, because I did. I knew exactly what happened. The bank had flagged an old email address. My mom had tried to reset something and clicked the wrong link. They'd sent the verification code to the email I used to manage everything. The email I created. The email I maintained. The email I told them to switch off of years ago. And they never bothered, because I was always there to catch it. It wasn't a trap. It was a consequence. And the second it became their inconvenience, suddenly my nothing turned into an emergency. I typed a reply. 2 words. Handle it. I watched the typing bubble appear and disappear on my screen like a heartbeat. Then my mom finally called again. I answered. Not because I wanted to talk, because I wanted to hear the truth. Her voice was tight, controlled, the kind of control that always came right before she exploded. Are you seriously just going to sit there while we lose access to our money? I breathed in. I didn't match her volume. I didn't get pulled into the fight. I'm not sitting there, I said. I'm living my life. She made a sound like a laugh, but it wasn't humor. Oh, don't start. You're in this house. You eat here. You called me useless, I said quietly. So I'm letting you see what that looks like. There was a pause. A real one. And then her voice turned colder. So this is punishment. No, I said. This is reality. You want access to your accounts. Call the bank. Prove your identity. Do what adults do. You always did it, she snapped. I always did everything, I said. And for a second, I swear I heard something behind her anger. Not remorse. Not understanding. Just fear. Because once you realize the person you've been minimizing is actually holding your life together, you have to face what that says about you. She didn't want to face that. So she went for the old weapon. You're selfish. I exhaled, slow, and I said, no. I'm done being useful in a way you don't respect. Then I hung up. The next few days were a slow-motion unraveling. Not dramatic in a movie way. Worse, because it was ordinary. Bills didn't go through. Subscriptions stopped working. Password resets failed. The cable company didn't care that my mom didn't have time for this. The bank didn't care that my dad didn't know how. Life doesn't reward entitlement, it just keeps moving. And the strangest part was how quickly they blamed me for the mess they'd never learned to handle. Like I was stealing something from them, like my help was theirs by default, but I hadn't taken anything. I just stopped giving away the parts of me they never valued. And that's when it hit me. The real payoff, the real justice. They didn't miss me, they missed what I did for them. And if you think that's where it ends, trust me, it only got messier from there. The fallout didn't end with a locked bank account or a few missed payments. It turned into something uglier, something quieter. The kind of ugly that doesn't look like yelling. It looks like rewriting history. My mom started telling people I was punishing them, that I was being spiteful, that I had set them up. My aunt texted me a paragraph about family loyalty. My brother sent a single line. "This is embarrassing." And my dad did what he always did. He tried to smooth it over without ever naming the real problem. "Just help us this one time," he said on the phone, voice low. "Your mom's stressed. It'll be easier if you handle it." Easier. That word landed like a weight, because easier for them had always meant heavier for me. I didn't scream. I didn't clap back. I didn't send a long message explaining my childhood like a thesis. I just sat in my car outside the grocery store, hands on the steering wheel, and realized how clean the pattern was. When I was useful, I was tolerated. When I wasn't, I was a problem. It made me think of all the moments I'd tried to earn love through reliability, all the times I'd been the good one, the quiet one, the one who didn't need much, the one who fixed things before anyone noticed they were broken. I used to believe that if I did enough, they'd see me, but what they saw wasn't me. They saw a function, a role, and the moment I stopped performing it, the family didn't ask, "Are you okay?" They asked, "How dare you?" That was the real reveal. Not the bank, not the Wi-Fi, not the bills. It was the way they reacted to my absence like it was theft. Because in their minds, my labor belonged to them. My patience belonged to them. My emotional bandwidth belonged to them. Even my calm belonged to them. And once you understand that, you start seeing the entire dynamic differently. That driveway scene wasn't just an outburst. It was a summary. "You're useless" didn't mean I did nothing. It meant I wasn't doing the kind of thing they wanted to brag about. I wasn't making them look good. I wasn't fitting the story. And if you've ever been the good kid in a family like this, you know exactly what I mean. You become the easiest person to blame because you're the safest person to hurt. You don't explode. You don't storm out. You don't embarrass them publicly. You absorb. You adjust. You make it work. Until one day, you don't. And then suddenly everyone is shocked that the sponge stopped soaking. I won't pretend stepping back was easy. It wasn't. The first night I ignored those notifications. My chest felt tight, like I was doing something wrong, like I was being a bad daughter, like love meant obligation. But over time, that feeling changed, because the quiet that followed my no wasn't loneliness. It was space. It was the first time in my life I wasn't bracing for the next crisis, the next request, the next, "Can you just..." And in that space, I finally heard the truth. Being useful is not the same as being valued. You can keep a household running and still be treated like dead weight. You can carry everyone's stress and still be called selfish the moment you stop. And if that sounds familiar, I want you to hear this part clearly. You're not failing because you're tired. You're tired because you've been doing the work of multiple people while being told it doesn't count. You're not too sensitive because it hurts. It hurts because you were taught that your worth is measured by what you provide, not who you are. And you're not useless because they say you are. They say you are because it protects the story they need to believe. The story where they're the generous ones. The story where you're the problem. The story where your quiet labor was never labor at all, just something they were entitled to. I didn't get an apology. Not a real one. I got anger. I got guilt trips. I got silence. And weirdly, that silence did me a favor, because it confirmed what I'd been denying for years. They didn't love me more when I gave more. They just took more. So I made a decision that felt selfish at first, until it started feeling like survival. I stopped auditioning for a role that was designed to erase me. I started building a life where my value wasn't tied to fixing other people's messes. And here's what I learned on the other side of that. You don't have to burn the house down to leave it. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply stop holding up the ceiling. And if the whole place shakes when you step back, that doesn't mean you were wrong. That means you were carrying more than anyone ever admitted.